Thank you for joining me again. This episode is going to be mostly about a single book, and that is Ida, A Sword Amongst Lions. It is a biography of Ida Wells, who was a journalist who primarily documented lynchings of black people in America from the late 19th to the early 20th century, although she lived until the 1930s. Overall, this is a 5-star book. I definitely would like people to be aware of this book and read it. Now, I made a bit of a mistake in that it had been on my to-be read list for a very long time, a few years actually, and because it's an 800-page book and because it's important, my plan was to go through the whole process, which is to read and take notes and really get the most out of this book. But it sat there for a very long time, even though there are free copies available online easily. And so I finally just picked it up and started burning through it without taking notes. And I regret that now, because it is a long, detailed book, and there's a lot there. There's a lot of meat on the bone. Anyway, my suggestion would be familiarize yourself with the story a little bit before you start reading, and then get after it. Great book, 5-star book. And it goes into lynching in the United States. Now, there's a couple of other books that I wanted to mention that also deal with lynching. The most famous, probably the most famous lynching in American history, other than maybe Leo Frank's lynching, which we'll also talk about, is the Emmett Till lynching. And there was a book called The Blood of Emmett Till, published in 2017, I think, and it won several awards, including the Robert F. Kennedy Book Award, the Atlanta Constitution Best Book of the Year, the NPR Best Book of the Year, and it's one of those books that again, long, detailed, covers everything. I have minor quibbles about both books, about the Ida Wells book, the way it dealt with her passing at the end of her life. It seemed sort of perfunctory, and also the Emmett Till book. I didn't like the way the divorce of Carolyn and Roy Bryant, who were, Roy Bryant was the husband who definitely was involved in the murder. But they got a divorce, and it was never really explained, because both Carolyn and Roy Bryant lived into old age and were largely unrepentant. Carolyn Bryant was definitely unrepentant. The author of that book interviewed her, and also largely unscathed by the whole thing. And I would have liked to have seen more into explained about that. But anyway, I definitely wanted to talk about that. The other lynching that I mentioned, which is the lynching of Leo Frank, who was a Jewish American in Marietta, Georgia. I've seen alternate stories, alternate reporting of exactly where that took place. I need, for my own personal edification, I need to figure out what happened there. But the book that covers that almost completely, and it will answer any questions that you might have about the death of Mary Fagan and the subsequent lynching of Leo Frank, is And the Dead Shall Rise, which has a story in itself, because the author of that book was related to...
With the last words on my lips, I am a revolutionary.
And I wanted to mention just one more book, and that is From Selma to Sorrow, which is about Louisa Viola, who was a quite wealthy Michigander who went to Mississippi to participate in the civil rights movement and wound up being assassinated by Klansmen. That book I was less fond of. There's a lot more to that story. It was a sort of a short, quick book, but I mean, maybe there's just not that much there. The history behind it, the reasoning by which she went down to Mississippi, how people became aware of it, it wasn't really covered. There was quite a bit about the aftermath and some of the people who were in the car with her who survived. But anyway, basically, I just wanted to spend a little time talking about Ida Wells, this book, and hopefully there will be some people who see this who can point me towards some other books in that same milieu of history. And I really appreciate your time, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.